You know, we're kind of obsessed with firsts, aren't we? It seems to be a universal human thing. Just think about it for a second. A baby's first step, their first word, winning first place in a race, these are the moments that we build our stories around.
They're these powerful personal milestones. Each one kicks off a brand new chapter, and they hold this special kind of energy, this potential, that we carry with us for, well, pretty much the rest of our lives.
But what if I told you that the ancient meaning of first was way more explosive, way more dynamic than just being number one? Today, we're going to do a little linguistic detective work to uncover a hidden and, frankly, a much more powerful definition.
Okay, let's dive right in. We're going to trace the secret of the word first all the way back to a single, powerful verb root in ancient Hebrew. This is really where the whole story gets started.
This is it. This is our word, Bakar. Now, it doesn't just mean to be first in a line. Its real core idea is to burst forth. Think about a spring of water bursting through the ground, or a seed literally erupting from the soil. It's an action, it's a force of nature. And this one dynamic idea is basically the DNA for how an entire ancient culture understood the concept of firsts.
So from this single root, Bakar, two huge concepts branch out, and they really shaped ancient society. The first is Bekor, which means the firstborn, and the second is Bikkurim, the firstfruits of the harvest. Let's start by heading down the path of the firstborn. So how does this idea of bursting forth connect to the firstborn? Well, in the ancient world, this was about so much more than just birth order. It was about status, it was about power, and it came with a sacred duty.
And if you're wondering just how important this was, get this. The word Bekor, or firstborn, shows up a whopping 117 times in the Hebrew Bible. That tells you just how central this idea was to everything: family, law, and religion.
This quote from Genesis, it just captures the feeling perfectly. The patriarch Jacob is blessing his son, and he calls him the first sign of his strength. The firstborn wasn't just another kid. He was the living, breathing embodiment of the family's entire legacy and future.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Bekor had this fascinating split personality. For a human son, being the firstborn meant getting a double inheritance and becoming the new head of the family. But for an animal, being the firstling meant that it was consecrated, set apart for God, often as a holy sacrifice. Both were incredibly special, but they had very, very different destinies.
The status of the firstborn was this tangible thing called the Bekorah, or the birthright. It was so real, you could actually trade it. And that brings us to that famous story where a starving Esau sells his entire future as the family leader to his younger brother Jacob, all for a simple bowl of stew.
Okay, so that's the first path. Now let's follow that second branch that grew from our root word Bakar. We're going to leave the family tent and head out into the fields to look at Bikkurim, the first fruits.
So, Bikkurim weren't just any old offering. They were the very first, the ripest, the absolute best parts of the harvest. The first bundle of barley, the first ripe fig. These were brought to the temple with a lot of ceremony, not just to say thank you, but also to provide food for the community's priests.
And this wasn't, just a friendly suggestion. It was a sacred command. This verse right here from Exodus makes it crystal clear. The best of the first, that belonged to God. It was a cornerstone of their entire relationship with the land and with the divine.
So, we've traced the path of the firstborn and the path of the firstfruits. Now let's bring it all back together and connect it to that one explosive idea to burst forth.
It sounds kind of like the start of a weird joke, doesn't it? A future leader, a holy animal, and a piece of fruit. But they are all tied together by that secret meaning of Bakar. So what is it that they all have in common?
And here it is. This is the crucial insight. The first was never, ever just about itself. The firstborn son wasn't just one person. He represented the strength and the future of the entire family line that was going to come after him.
And it's the exact same idea with the firstfruits. They weren't just a handful of grapes or a loaf of bread. They were a symbol of the entire harvest that was still out there ripening in the fields. They held all the promise and all the potential of the abundance that was still on its way.
When you see it this way, you realize this reveals an entire worldview. By offering the first part, whether it was a son, a lamb, or some figs, they were dedicating the whole thing. It was this profound act of faith, trusting in the abundance that they believed was sure to follow.
So that really makes you think, doesn't it? In a world that's often just about being number one, what if we started to see our own firsts a little differently? not just as a finish line, but as the promise of everything that's still to come. What's the first step you could take today that holds the promise of your entire potential?